Thank you. So our next speaker is Dr. Jesse Chapman, Causes and Consequences of Perceptual Impairment in Early Childhood. Thank you.
So my talk is going to move from the definitions of disability to the problem of situating two particular types of disabilities, which are kind of mirrors of one another to a certain extent. Um, within the um, within the within a sort of cosmological and technical framework, and also relating these to kind of problems of character. So I want to begin with a few basic questions. Why are some people born without sight or without hearing, or with impaired sight or impaired hearing? Why do many people lose their sight or hearing partially or completely over the courses of their lives? Is it because of something beyond their control, some greater cosmic cause, or is it because of some personal choice, a lapse in judgment or of character? Late Warring States and early Western Han texts explained perceptual impairments, sometimes as the result of personal failures, sensual overindulgence, other times as the result of cosmic factors, both biological and ecological, that might be managed but never controlled. The Hanshu Wuxing Zhi, a text that clearly bears the imprint of the classical turn in the late Western Han, synthesizes the two types of perspectives. Elements of the eye and ear in the general population appear due to cosmic disruptions, but those disruptions are traceable to failures of the ruler or members of his court to look and listen in the proper manner. By the late Warring States period, various texts argued that dazzling sights, sounds, and even flavors damaged the senses and corrupted the character. The roots of this type of argument can be seen as early as the Laozi. A well-known passage explains that the five colors, or perhaps the five objects of visual perception, cause blindness, the five tones deafness, and the five flavors numbing of the mouth. The Bensheng chapter of the Liu Shi Chunqiu emphasizes the sage's avoidance of pleasurable but harmful sights, sounds, and foods. The sage avoids sounds that cause deafness, sights that cause blindness, and foods that cause muteness. However sensually satisfying they may be, when it comes to sounds, sights, and flavors, he takes in those that are advantageous to his nature and discards those that do harm to his nature. This is the way of keeping one's nature whole. People who overindulge in sensual pleasures are responsible for the destruction of their own bodies and characters. Good health and good character are closely related, if not synonymous. Insofar as sight and hearing reflect overall good health, perceptual impairments may reflect patterns of overindulgence associated with poor character. Early imperial texts, however, posit a range of causes for perceptual impairment, many of which have little or nothing to do with the excessive pursuit of pleasure. These include cosmological influences that prevail in certain environments, as well as biological processes such as illness and normal aging. The Huainanzi treatise on earthly patterns claims that particular types of qi associated with specific local environments are responsible for variations in human biology. Certain types of qi lead to various disabilities, with qi around dikes or perhaps obstructions in general, causing muteness, and the qi of wind causing deafness. Environmental conditions exercise a powerful effect on the human body, especially as it develops. These effects manifest through the dynamic action of various types of qi. Medical manuscripts from the Ma Wangdui tombs provide a complementary perspective on the causes of visual and oral impairments, as well as numerous other types of conditions. One text suggests that in the absence of remedies that it offers, sight and hearing loss result by age 60 from the depletion of yin qi that occurs with the normal aging process. Manuals for the cauterization of mai, the channels through which yin and yang flood through the body, describe inadequate circulation of qi as the cause of hearing loss, eye problems, and numerous other ailments. Several of the medical manuscripts present a series of exercises for promoting good vision and hearing, usually in the context of a broader program to promote longevity. Conjoining yin and yang, for example, promotes sexual exercises for health and longevity, developing in 10 stages. At the first stage, the eyes and ears are perceptive and bright. The chart, known as Drawing of Guiding and Pulling, contains a fragmentary image of a figure with legs apart and arms seemingly spread with the caption, Pulling Deafness, Yin Long. While this manual consists in a series of captions and images without theoretical explanations, an entry with the caption, Penetrating Yin and Yang with a Pole, suggests that it works on the same broad principle of restoring or preserving the balance of yin and yang qi that is the basis of other methods represented in the tomb. Given that at least some texts suggest excessive indulgence in sensual pleasures leads to perceptual impairment and general poor health, we might expect to find cautionary tales of figures who lost or damaged their sight or hearing through such indulgences. Such examples are in fact somewhat difficult to locate. Numerous images of highly talented or otherwise exceptional persons with disabilities appear in early Chinese texts. One passage in the Huainanzi posits that Gao Yao, a legendary judge and advisor to the sage King Yao, was unable to speak. Zuo Qiuming, the attributed author of the Zuo tradition, is said to have been blind. Music masters who were generally blind appear as trusted advisors in a variety of texts. As Milburn writes, to reach such a position was the pinnacle of achievement for a disabled individual born into an ordinary family. One well-known story tells of a lute player being deliberately blinded. Qin Shi Huang blinded Gao Jianli, a close friend of Jin Ke, who had made an assassination attempt against him. Gao Jianli hid a lead weight in his lute, attempted to bludgeon the emperor, and was himself summarily executed. Not all images of blind figures in early texts are positive. The sage King Shun's father, whose name Guso simply means blind old man, acts as a rhetorical foil to demonstrate Shun's unwavering filial piety. Shun's father, stepmother, and younger brother attempted to burn him in a granary, and on another occasion, to bury him in a well. Shun remained ever filial. Character seems to have been less associated with physical perceptual impairments such as blindness or deafness than with failures to properly use one's faculties of sight and hearing, failures to see or listen well, and consequent errors in judgment or ritual lapses. The early Western Han statesman Jia Yi, in the Rongjing chapter of his Xinshu, emphasizes that the ruler must maintain his gaze in a manner appropriate to various ritual occasions, maintaining a gaze that is level like a balance at court and lowered like a hanging net while in mourning. Jia Yi does not seem to address the ruler's physical capacity to see, but nonetheless suggests that the ideal ruler uses his sight in a conscious, ritually determined manner. Jia Yi's text also includes a chapter, title of which, RB, may refer to numbness in or an ailment of the ear that denounces King Fuchai of Wu for his disastrous decision to listen to false oaths of fealty while ignoring the loyal admonitions of Wu Zishu. Jia Yi had been at court and the Ma Wangdui medical manuscripts had been entombed during the early days of the dynasty in the time of Emperor Wen. Emperor Wen's grandson, Emperor Wu, would expand the domain, carrying out military campaigns in virtually every direction, leaving behind a cash-strapped, overextended empire. In the next century, reformist thinkers advocated returning to the austere pattern of governance they saw articulated in the classics. A newfound fondness for antiquity in the late Western Han ushered in a classical turn. Efforts to align the empire with ancient models spurred major ritual reforms, bibliographical projects to collate and collect texts, and the composition of new works that elevated the status of the five classics. Old technical traditions describing the movements of qi in the cosmos and the body became integrated with ideas from the classics that concerned the cosmic power and human obligations of rituals to their subjects. The Wuxing Zhi is best understood within the context of a broader movement that elevated the classics and sought to understand technical fields ranging from medicine to astronomy to ecology through the lens of those weighty, expansive, and authoritative texts. The classical tradition in early imperial China portrayed the ideal ruler, among other things, as an exceptionally perspicacious individual, a gifted reader of signs. As much as signs were the object of knowing imperial vision and hearing, blurred vision and dulled hearing or dulled listening became the subject of certain cosmic punishments. In the Hanshu technical treatises, a motley array of signs were tied to failures in the way the emperor, members of his court, looked and listened to the cosmic and human worlds. Many different signs could indicate that the vision of the person at the center of the cosmos had grown unclear. Though failures of imperial vision were tied to actual elements of the eye and his subjects, the issue here seems not to be the state of the emperor's eyes or his physical capacity to see, but his capacity to fix his gaze and use it to take the measure of other people. Each major section of the Wuxing Zhi begins with a pithy citation of a tradition, likely a series of commentaries that grew by accretion over the course of the Western Han. The section on vision in the Wuxing Zhi opens by pointing to a core problem. The ruler sometimes looks but does not see. The text equates this with a failure to make distinctions or sound judgments. The ruler's lack of judgment manifests in leniency among or toward his officials, warm weather, diseases, ailments of the eye, and water disrupting fire. Han scholars employed a complex exegetical process to make it so that signs that pointed to lapses in clear-sightedness made sense as a unit. Following the citation of the tradition, the Wuxing Zhi provides a lengthy explanation culled from various sources of how the signs are ultimately related to one another. The deeper explanation of leniency spells out the relationship between the ruler's failure to be clear-sighted and disorder in the ranks of government. If His Majesty is not clear-sighted, but dim and befuddled, then he will not be able to distinguish between those who are good and those who are repugnant. He will promote those he knows and those who are similar to himself, without regard for their achievements or their crimes. The 100 offices will be abandoned and thrown into chaos. The application of punishment and favor, or xing and de, was tied in early imperial cosmology to the seasons. The warm yang summer, the time of growth, corresponded to imperial favor, whereas the cold yin winter, the time when things naturally die off, corresponded to punishment. Each part of the cycle was necessary to maintain the cosmic balance, and excessive leniency on the part of the emperor, just as much as the excessive use of punishments, could throw off that balance. This disturbance in the cosmic cycle, characterized by hot summer days and warm winters, in turn produces disease. The explanation continues: there will be injury and disease among the people, and thus its extreme manifestation is disease. Lack of frost in winter, the text explains, leads to the excessive growth of grasses, and in turn, sprouting eating insects, leading to famine and starvation. The problem of calamities involving sheep is solved through an ingenious use of the trigrams of the changes of Joe. Sheep have hard horns above and hard hooves below, and a soft middle, and thus have an affinity to the trigram Li, which consists in a soft middle yin line bounded by two hard yang lines above and below. It also happens that Li corresponds to fire, like the duty of vision, as well as to the eye. The Wuxing treats the duty of listening, like the duty of vision, as a problem of maintaining the right state of mind and fully employing the senses. Unlike plain hearing, listening is not a passive capacity, though failures in the imperial duty of listening are cosmologically bound to elements of the ear among the broader populace. Listening, like vision, is an aid to evaluating members of the court. Lapses in listening frequently point to devastating errors in the evaluation of counsel provided by high-ranking ministers and officials. Whereas the section on vision pointed to the ruler's incapacity or failure to judge his ministers, the section on listening emphasizes his failure to properly communicate with them. Not heeding counsel is to fail to engage in collaborative, meaningful discussion with members of the court so that a breakdown in communication occurs. It means that when an emperor listens in a prejudicial fashion, he is blocked off and separated from the true state of those below, and he is no longer able to plan and consider matters of gain and loss with them. The text seems to indicate the all too common problem of a ruler showing favor toward one faction or another at court. When this occurs, it suggests the emperor becomes cut off from his many subordinates and forfeits the benefit of their counsel. As ministers and the broader base of imperial officials become cut off from the ruler, they conduct their duties in a more stern, pressed upon fashion. Hence, its sign of blame is stringency. Whereas failures in vision brought constant heat, failures in listening bring constant cold. Excessive cold, like excessive heat, has a ruinous effect on agriculture. Grains fail to sprout, thus its extreme manifestation is impoverishment. Cosmological consequences reverberate through the natural world, manifesting as excessive or untimely snow, frost, or hail. The Hanshu places the duty of listening in a network of taxonomic correspondences that includes the north, winter, water, the planet Mercury, the watchstar. Certain types of creatures, including fish, locusts, and pigs, are strongly affected. Here too, the changes is a conduit for creating connections between seemingly disparate types of phenomena. Commentary to the tradition explains that in the changes, the trigram kan, sinkhole, is associated with pigs. Pigs have large ears, but are not perceptive listeners. When the chi of listening is destroyed, there are calamities involving pigs. When such disruptions reach the human realm, they manifest as illnesses affecting the ears, that's bingar, and ailments of the ear, that's r. Because it is associated with water, and water corresponds to black, there are black pestilences and black omens. The explanation of the tradition notes that watery chi is responsible for illnesses that damage hearing. This cosmological etiology, nonetheless, can be traced to a human source. The explanation closes with a citation of Jingfang's tradition of the changes that directly invokes the problem of the emperor seeking out and adopting good advice. For hearing good counsel but failing to accept it, the sign of blame is deafness. By way of conclusion, I'd like to underscore a few key points. The Wuxing, a text representative of a broader movement that integrated classical authority into technical writing and thinking. adopted aspects of both types of old etiologies for perceptual impairments, including those that centered on sensual overindulgence and those that centered on unavoidable biological processes such as aging and environmental influences. These types of etiology were by no means supplanted by the Wuxingzhi, but remained available as causal explanations for sight and hearing loss. Seeing and listening in the Wuxingzhi are mirrors of one another. Sight is associated with south fire in summer, while listening is associated with north water in winter. Even the trigrams Li and Kan are a complementary pair, with exactly opposing arrangements of yin and yang lines. They are also linked to opposing types of failures in administration. Failures of sight produce excessive leniency, while failures of listening produce excessive stringency. Ailments of the eyes and ears were similar to and distinct from other types of anomalies in the Wuxingzhi. The tradition and explanatory commentary places these problems in the same taxonomic network as fires and floods, planetary anomalies, crop failures, and strange signs involving plants and animals. It provides a cosmological apparatus for explaining eye and ear ailments as signs without including any actual records of them. The Wuxingzhi provided a framework for claiming loss of hearing resulted from the emperor shirking his duty. The emperor's failure to maintain the right mental and emotional states required for clear-sighted vision and perceptive listening could lead to the actual physical loss of sight and hearing among his subjects, to whom he was inextricably bound by qi. And that's it for me. Thanks to you all very much for listening, and especially to Avital for organizing this very enlightening and enriching conference.
Thank you. Thank you.